If you don't already know how to find this information, it would be a good idea to see my last few videos where I'm teaching how to find those things. We can graph the asymptotes. No holes, x-intercept is at -4, and y-intercept is at -10. So one thing you might notice that looks weird, we do have a point on the horizontal asymptote. You are allowed to cross over horizontal asymptotes, just not vertical asymptotes. We need more of an idea of what's going on the graph, so we can plot some points. It's usually a good idea to plot one x value on each side of the vertical asymptotes. So we can start with -3. And again, you always want to go back to your reduced equation. This one doesn't matter as much because we didn't cancel anything, but I would still go back to your most reduced equation just to get in that habit. So plugging in -3 for x, we get 5/4. We can assume it's going to keep approaching the vertical asymptote. And then on the other side, because there is a horizontal asymptote, it's going to eventually end up getting closer and closer to it. Now looking at the right side of this first vertical asymptote, we can plug in -1 for x. So we get -7.5. So that's about right here. We can connect these points and just assume that it keeps going down closer and closer to the vertical asymptote. And same with this point, we don't want to keep going up because then it would eventually cross over the horizontal asymptote and we would have found another x-intercept if there was one. So that means that it has to keep going down. And the graph might not exactly look quite like this, but as long as you have it in the right sections, this is just a sketch, so that's okay. And then finally, plug in 2 also for x. We get 7.5. It's going to be somewhere up there, which means our graph is going to be in this quadrant up here. Looking at another graph, but we can plot what we have so far. We can connect those, assume it's going to keep going closer to both asymptotes. And then we already have a point in this quadrant, which means this is the quadrant where the graph will exist on the left side of the vertical asymptote. So in this graph, we're going to have to plot a lot of points because this is all we have so far. So we can plug in -2 to see what's going on the left side of the graph, again in the reduced equation. And here's a little shortcut. You can make it into a table. We don't have to know the exact y value. So if you plug in -2 for x, the numerator is going to give you a negative number. -2 minus 3, that's going to be a negative number. And then -2 plus 1 is also a negative number. So that's a negative number over a negative times a negative, which is a positive, and a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So as long as we know, because our horizontal asymptote's at 0, if we get a positive number here, it's gonna be above the asymptote, and if we get a negative, it's gonna be below. So at -2, it's something negative, so we can draw our graph somewhere over there. If you're not comfortable with that method, just plug in -2 for x and actually plot the specific coordinate. So at 2, we have some negative number. So that means it's going down here. We don't know between 0 and -1 if it goes down or up, but -0.5, it's going to be a positive number, so that means it has to be going back up. And then we can plug in one more value. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, something up here. And if you're not confident with your graph at the end, just keep plugging in more x values so that it makes you more confident because you know those are the exact coordinates on your graph.